Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. On this video, I want us to do something a little bit different. Now, Venice Music is a distributor that I use when I'm releasing music with the artists that I work with. And one thing that's great about Venice is they really do care about artists and educating artists on marketing campaigns and marketing strategies. So what they do is they release a marketing case study. So I thought, how about we go through some of their marketing case studies and I can help break them down as someone who's worked in industry for over 7 years, who's worked on some of the biggest campaigns with the biggest artists in the world. I think it would be great to go through the breakdown from Venice Music and for me to kind of walk us through it. So we're going to start with this first episode looking at Sabrina Carpenter. I mean, when you talk about a superstar, Sabrina is, at the higher echelon of that list, of course. But for the smaller developing artists, I do believe there's going to be some real key insights from this that you can utilize even with the smallest budgets, even with starting at ground zero for a lot of artists. So let's get into it. Cool. So they start by just talking about one, what this is, being a case study looking into Sabrina Carpenter's short and sweet um, album, her sixth studio album. And isn't that crazy that short and sweet, the kind of breakout album from Sabrina, is her sixth studio album? I think it just speaks to the power of catalog. It speaks to the power of making music because you never know when, that lightning in a bottle moment is going to happen, when that breakthrough year is going to happen. Your debut year might be 10 years into it. But hopefully, with the insight that we get from this, we can reduce that time and get some really good learnings from the marketing of this. So I think what's so great here is they first start off with defining Sabrina's brand. I speak to a lot of artists who want to work campaigns, who, want to, you know, be artists and release music. And when we get into the nitty gritty of defining who they are as an artist, defining their brand, that's when they struggle. And I think a really great technique in order to like figure this out for you as an artist is looking at the artists that you like already, seeing what they do, seeing, outside of music, what are you into? What films do you like watching? What aesthetic do you follow? What sort of clothes do you wear? Your, fashion, a fashion sense, like, and looking at where it stems from. Are you into streetwear? Are you into like more chic, high fashion? Are you into thrifting? Vintage? Like, look at those aspects of yourselves because that's just going to help with the building blocks of understanding where your brand is. Pinterest is great because you can look through images and get inspired by themes. A lot of artists pick references from time periods, from, pop culture. Sabrina here talks about Hollywood references, and that like early Hollywood association is something that we see clearly in a lot of Sabrina's work. And that's something that, growing up, whether you were aligned with maybe Quentin Tarantino and those sorts of like aesthetic movies, or um, even more recent movies like Ryan Coogler and the like hyper um, look into black culture, that's something that we can pick and dive into when defining your brand. So I think that's a great place to start because it just helps with the building blocks of building a campaign. Because when cool, you're into cheeky humor, romance, and Hollywood references, that just makes ideas flow much more easier because we know where we're not just shooting in the wind. We have specific references and specific touch points that we can pull from. So I think that's an amazing spot place to start because defining the brand is so important. So this looks at how Sabrina went on tour with Taylor Swift, opening for Taylor Swift. And what I think this really highlights is on, of course, on a massive scale because opening for Sabrina, like, I mean, for Taylor, that is something that, artists would kill and die for. So it's massive. But what I think we can pick from this is warming up your audience. taking the time, cool. If we know that we are gonna move into campaign mode for an EP, for a project, even just for a single, there is value in warming up your audience, whether that be creating content from you doing like, I don't I can't over stress the power of open mics. Um, Going out there and just performing your music to people and recording it, taking that content. Look, it's not opening up for Taylor Swift, but it's a chance for your music to be seen live and for you to create content from a live perspective so people know how your music sounds in a room, how it makes people feel, and there's some really cool moments that you can capture from those from doing open mics, especially when you're early in your career where you don't have an opportunity to be opening for certain acts. Booking agents can look at that. If you're applying for So Far Sounds, you want to get, there's a lot that you can benefit from when it comes to open mics. But I think a great way is warming up your audience, because if you're an artist who's about to release a single, like, it's so hard for you to gain any traction when the first thing you post is music out now, or music's going to be out in a week or two, when you could have been creating content of you performing, of you in a studio, of you, crafting the sound, showing the behind the scenes of that, leading up to announce. So now the algorithm is already, working towards you. It knows, okay, this person's in go mode and content is being produced, so we can start pushing your content further. Like, it knows that the algorithm knows it's not a dead account, it's an active account. So at least you're giving yourself more of a chance to be seen. And again, when you're pitching for radio and pitching for playlists, these are the things that when they come onto your socials, that they can see, oh, they're not just pushing out now, it's coming out in a week. They've been warming up their audience. Their audience is ready. When they look in the comments, they see, oh, fans saying, when is this coming out, oh, does this mean new music is coming out? Like, that is the sort of engagement that people want to see, especially stakeholders in playlists and radio. So again, it just builds up the momentum leading into announce or leading into singles. So I think, of course, Sabrina had the luxury of opening up for one of the biggest artists in the world, so all eyes were on her already. But again, I'm I'm sure if you go on her socials when she was opening up, the amount of content that was being flooded out from that tour is exactly that. It's getting Sabrina out there, you know. Um, so I think that's a great look. Cool. We jump into the Hollywood references, and again, now that we're moving into campaign mode, the importance of defining a brand is coming into play, because now that we have these touch points, we can create a cohesive message in the content that we're producing. We're not just producing generic lip sync videos and generic, my music is coming. Now we're inviting an audience into a world that you've created. You have made the deliberate choice, like Sabrina made the deliberate choice of, cool, this is going to be themed around Hollywood, it's going to be themed around romance, it's going to showcase my humor, all of that. Now, when you present that into the world, it's not, it, it forces an audience to make a choice of whether this aligns with me, I like the aesthetic, this works with me or not, and by making that choice, they can opt to enter your world. When you're just doing generic, lip sync videos and promo and stuff, it's becomes passive. There's no choice in it, because it's just like anything everyone else sees. That I don't. It's so, blasé. It's so. Uh, it's hard to describe it. It just becomes the norm. It becomes background music. There's no choice in it. And cool, there are gonna be people who look at this Hollywood references and say, "Oh, it's cliche. Oh, it's played out." Da 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 da. Fine, but you'll also find people who look at it and look at Sabrina and be like, this aligns with me, it aligns with where I'm at, and that choice is what you need. Instead of giving them no option and no world to enter, now you just fall into the myriad of other people, thousands and thousands of uploads that are happening on every platform. So I think this just kind of highlights, cool, now that we're into the campaign mode, defining the brand was so important, because it establishes the look, the feel, and the world that we're building, and that gives audiences a choice whether to engage or not. Cheeky humor. I like this because I think sometimes when we look, like when artists are trying to, present themselves into the world, they feel as though they can't. allow themselves into the campaign. They have an idea of what it means to be an artist, and that it's almost like a isolated version of themselves, where they want to be hyper cool or hyper perfect. And with perfection means there's no room for humanity, and humanity is what makes people connected with you. If you're someone who's the class clown, if you're someone who's funny, if you're someone who's stoic, if you're someone who's into sports, or someone who is like super artistically inclined, allow that side of yourself to be shown. You know, someone like Tyler the Creator, on the other hand, who, of course, we've all seen the humor and the funny side of him, but in recent years, he's wanting to highlight the, you know, his artistic eye and his ear and his musicality, and that's been on the forefront of a lot of his content. The behind the scene documentaries of how he built Cornucopia, all of that is showing a particular side of himself that he wants to express. The videos of him playing the piano with Kali Uchis, these are all deliberate in showing a new side of him, where once he was presented as just purely comedic, now he wants to show a different side of who he is, the humanity within him. And again, that just is another touch point for audiences to engage. Because back to Sabrina, if the Hollywood content is going out there and people are liking it, and engaging through that, it's like, cool. We've got an audience through that. We've taken an audience through the Hollywood references. That's one touch point. Now, because diversity is key, we are going to be moving on to a different touch point. Her cheeky humor, the fact that she, her merch has like Jesus was a carpenter, I heart sluts hoodies, like all of that is blending in her sort of humor. So people who align with that, who find that funny, who find that engaging, endearing, they can connect through that avenue. So now, just from two touch points, you've been able to amass two different sets of audiences. And again, it's not even just about the audiences. From a monetary aspect, that has bled into the branding and the merch. Again, it's all about building a world. Romance, another layer. I think, again, this is just another pillar that Sabrina was able to touch into. The romance, the love, like there has to be an essence of depth. Where are the themes of this project? I was working with an artist, and he was a dancehall artist, and we were looking at themes and looking at what sort of emotional touch points can we pull on for projects for this. And we were looking at, he was a big fan of 2016 era music, when Drake was coming out, when, that Kid was, really bubbling into the scene. And we were like, but Khan was really being pushed to the mainstream. And we were like, cool, we want to touch on that nostalgia aspect of things, the nostalgia of 2016. Of course, look, 2026, 2016, it's marriage in and stuff, so it makes sense. But again, looking at all these touch points that we've seen so far, the Hollywood references, that can, let's call that aesthetic. Then you've got the cheeky humor from Sabrina. Let's call that the humanity, emotional side, the deeper connection, the human behind the art. And now this touch point of romance is the themes. What are the themes? What are the emotional touch points of this project? All of these things can be drawn out through a conversation. So managers, artists, like, it could be intimidating to see all this and be like, oh, how can I think of that? It's about having a conversation. I hope this video helps to kind of elicit those conversations. So again, how does Sabrina use these themes in her marketing strategy? So fashion and media collaborations, partnering with Skims. And I think this is such a great little touch point, because I was having a conversation with a friend who works at Havas. I'm attacking here because he does really great breakdowns, Armsy. And we were talking about brand partnerships and collaborations, and he was talking to me about artists that he was working with, and he wanted to like have a lip gloss line with her. And I'm like, that's such a great idea, because she's really into her makeup and stuff like that. I'm like, when, as an artist, when you express sides of yourself, whether that be your interest in fashion, whether that be you're interested in, I had another artist who was interested in cars, and I'm like, cool, part of this campaign. Let's go to car meets. Let's, record, car shows and stuff. Because when you are able to express those different sides of you, it opens the doors to brand partnerships. Because if you're an artist who's into cars and you showcase that in your videos and the content, then who knows? Maybe a car meet will sponsor you to come to their event to perform. Maybe, and again, working at labels and working at um, different companies, brands do come to us and be like, you know, what artist is into football? What artist is into a car? Because, Mercedes want an up and coming artist in their next campaign. FIFA, they want, an artist who's into football, at least in that world, to be on the next soundtrack. But they're not going to come to you, or they're not going to see you as a viable option if you don't express that side of yourself. So Sabrina showcasing that fashion is at the forefront of herself and her identity allows for a partnership of Skims to make sense. But if you don't show any of that, then you are going to limit yourself. You're limiting the opportunities and the collaborations that you could have. Again, look at how the Hollywood references lean into Met Gala, her outfit there and that collaboration with Skims. Again, it's just another cultural touch point that has been influenced by those pillars of defining the brand of Hollywood references, cheeky humor, and romance. So being able to identify those parts of yourself in an authentic way allows for authentic collaborations that when it happens, you don't see what, like, why is this person collaborating with this? Like, it doesn't make sense. Instead, it's like, oh, that is so sick that they're collaborating because this person has shown that they're interested in this. This person has shown that this is a part of them. So this collaboration makes sense. Oh, I just really want to highlight how all of these identifying factors when it comes to, these touch points influence throughout the campaign. Now your music video isn't just a generic music video, it's a video that ties into this expression that you've been showcasing since the beginning, and it allows your campaign to feel succinct, feel whole, feel, unified. And again, it just allows people to come into your world. Leveraging live performances. Again, Sabrina is at the higher end of the industry and therefore is able to perform at massive spots like Coachella and with BBC One, Live Lounge, and Governor's Ball. However, as artists who are developing and still growing and still early, open mics, again, I'm going to say one more time, are great opportunities to do that. Also, there are like, I live in London, so I am privileged enough to be around jam nights, jam sessions, where artists are able to come, just jump on stage and perform music. But let's say you're in a small town, you can host open mics, you can host your own events, whether it be small, forget about the size, and just try to be seen live, be seen in a space that makes sense for you. Build that community around you, whether it's small or big, build it for yourself, and then you're able to work on leveraging it to get bigger and bigger and bigger. I think about, like, even just cultural touch points, like, again, for this dancehall act that I was working with, Carnival is going to be a massive moment. Even if it's just attending Carnival and creating content around it, it's like, take these free wins basically. You're a dancehall artist and Carnival happens every year in Feb. Like, you better be there. You better be there doing your thing. Connect with DJs and be like, hey, can I do a 1-2 like in your set? Like, these are just opportunities for you to get out and in people's faces in a way that feels authentic. Because when you have these touch points, you're gonna know who to reach out to or where to go because it all fits into the world that you're building. Again, like, from a monetary aspect, like, when you're able to have these touch points, it can lead into things like merch and how it having your merch makes sense. Because I think, something that Sabrina does so perfectly here and illustrates so perfectly is, you know, as a fan, like, I have Kendrick Lamar merch that is so, I have a damn shirt right here, that when I wear this, I think about this era. I think about this era of Kendrick, and when you have themes and ideas and motifs that run through a campaign and runs through stuff like your merch and the apparel that you're building, it allows it to feel attached to a time, attached to an era. I mean, Taylor Swift does it best. Let's be real, uh, the eras that she's been through are so defined and so succinct that, if she does a re-release of a certain album, it's like a whole new drop, because people who may have been introduced to that era late in the game are gonna want the re-release of the merch. So that gives you opportunities to recycle old eras that you've been through because they're so clearly defined. But when you don't have these touch points and you don't have this defining world that you're entering, then everything blends into one. Generic merch from your first album is the same as the generic merch from your sixth album. What's the difference? What is the, you know, why would I care about a re-release when I know the next one's going to be the same? Cool, 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 cool. Uh, building her brand on social. Again, it's kind of what we've been talking about, how all of these pillars and touch points allowed her to create content that exists in that same world. Maximizing cultural relevance. Wow. And I think, again, we're referencing the facts, her cheeky humor, playful interactions with interviews like Hot Ones. As an artist that's known to be funny, that's known to be, hyper engaging, these collaborations make sense. But maybe that's not your bag. Maybe you're more of an intellectual, you're more of, um, yeah, you're into reading and quiet nights and you're really into, that world. Look at Dua Lipa and the content that she produced where she interviews authors. Like, just because this has been expressed one way with Sabrina, with where it's hyper bubbly and super loud and engaging in that way, doesn't mean that has to be you. You can find your angle and find who you are as a person. Dua Lipa, is someone who's very astute when it comes to reading, and she's shown that authors are huge in her world. So what does she do? She interviews them and creates content around that. So I think going through this campaign, it's not about what did Sabrina do that I can do. It's about looking at the strategy that Sabrina took and applying it to yourself, seeing the importance of taking a look inward into who you are as an artist, teams, asking these sorts of questions to your artists that go beyond the music. What are they into? What is their lifestyle like? I've had I've worked with DJs who, the DJ scene is quite drug, alcohol, heavy, and DJs who are sober who introduce that to their campaigns, and they host sober raves. They host, uh, DJ hikes where they hike to a certain spot and then play a set. Like, by being unique to you, you can create more unique, marketing strategies. Like, when you see a really cool strategy or you see a really cool campaign, don't think, oh, how can I replicate that? Or think about the fact that this feels unique, the fact that this feels different is because it is. So I'm not going to gain that same reaction by replicating it. I have to be unique. And how do you be unique? Be you. Cool. I think that's a great place to end it. Honestly, you can see, I don't know if you can see my battery's done, but I really do hope that you gain some insight from this. I gained some insight from this. I'm not the biggest Sabrina fan, but looking into this campaign, you can see why she's so successful. Like, it's, yeah, I'm gonna have to take a listen to Short and Sweet, because wow, this is how you build a superstar, and it's here. So shout out to Venice Music for, you know, giving out this sort of content, because I think it's great for artists to look into. This case study is really impressive. So shout out to the Venice team. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'm gonna do more of these because I like kind of talking through different campaigns and stuff. Um, Maybe we'll talk to a campaign that I actually worked on. There's a few here that I may have worked on. So exciting. I hope that you've enjoyed. Remember to do all the things: like, comment, subscribe, all of that. I'm going to be doing more and more and more. I'm trying to be more consistent when it comes to uploading. If you're an artist team out there who's looking for consultation help, book a free call with your boy. Look, this is what I love to do. I love working with artists. I love building campaigns, building worlds, and supporting artists build sustainable careers. So book a call. Let's get chatting. Let's get working together. Let's make 2026 the biggest year of your career. That's been me, AJ, the artist manager. Peace.